we are going to be looking at one of the major measurements that the Christian disc assesses, and that is introversion and extroversion. Now, I think most people are familiar or at least have heard of these concepts, but we're going to discuss them a little bit because there tend to be some misconceptions about them. Usually, we tend to think that most introverted people are very quiet and reserved and even dislike people, and that extroverted people are very much the life of the party. They're very outgoing. And those are generalizations that are somewhat true, but again, we're going to go over some of the misconceptions. So the concept of introversion and extroversion was devised by Carl Jung, or his name often gets pronounced different ways. You may even hear Carl Jung or Carl Jung, Carl Jung. Either way, it was he who came up with these concepts. And again, most people tend to think that this has to do with whether somebody is outgoing or reserved. But this is only a part of this picture. It has to actually do with how a person engages with the outer versus their inner world. And so just to kind of go over some of the differences, we have this representation of extroverts versus introverts. So what about extroverts? What are some of the features of those who are more extroverted? Well, they tend to be energized by groups. They really get a lot of just their emotional energy whenever they are around other people. And typically, the larger the group, the more energy they get. They can also feel drained or easily bored when they are alone, so they tend to be more inwardly drained versus outwardly stimulated. They're also quicker to act and make decisions, but they can often be misperceived as being obnoxious or impertinent or rude. And the two temperaments of our four that tend to fall into the extroverted side are the dominant and influencing types. And just a quick note on this idea that extroverts can be kind of rude or obnoxious. What a lot of people don't understand is that extroverted people can actually be self-conscious in a lot of ways. They can be, because they gain so much of their energy by being around other people, they are often conscientious and do care about how they are perceived by others. So they aren't just obnoxious without any sense of self-awareness. That may actually be their opposite intent. They don't want to be obnoxious. They want to be liked by other people. So what about introverts? Well, introverts, they are often drained by large groups. It's not that they don't like being social. It's just that their energy tends to be, just drained. I like to use the analogy of a battery. So with extroverts, their battery gets charged up when they're around people and tends to be drained if they're alone for too long. Introverts, their battery gets charged when they're alone and they tend to get drained while they're around other people. So again, they like to be alone, not because they hate other people, but because they tend to be charged up by their inner world. And that happens when there's silence and they're able to focus on what's going on inside. So they're inwardly stimulated. And they tend to be slower to act. They tend to like to think things through, even feel things through before making a decision. And the big misperception for introverts is that they dislike people, that they want to be alone. When in reality, some introverts can actually be very people-oriented. It's just that they have to reserve their energy in the right ways for them. They don't have as much of an ability to be around large groups for great amounts of time. They need time to detach a little bit so that they can charge up again for the next event or the next time they'll be around people. And the two types that are more introverted include the compliant type and the steady type. So in this diagram, we can actually see how each of the 4 types falls on this polarity of extroversion and introversion. The dominant types and the influencing types tend to be more extroverted, and the steady types and the compliant types tend to be more introverted. In the next video, we're going to talk about a different polarity, which we call process orientation. And you'll see how all these different polarities begin to overlap and bring us the 4 major types that are assessed by the Christian disc.